Well, here's a collection of bowls that have some stories to tell. This one over here comes from my family. Not sure who made it. You can still see the tooling marks on the outside as well as the inside. Here's a larger bowl. Now, some of these are over 100 years old, and all the years of use develop this patina. I think the older they are and the more they're used, the better they look. And check out this one. It's in the shape of an oval. I have no idea how they made that. It has a check all the way through right there. Here's one that's a little bit newer, sort of a totally round bottom bowl. And here's my first attempt at making some bowls. I did these yesterday. This one is ash, just a small bowl, good for the peanuts, I guess. And this one is maple, a little bit larger with a rim on the edge of it. And look at the features from the wood. That's what's nice about making bowls. This one is just amazing. It's made out of spalled maple, and the defects are even left in the piece. It's wood art. We visited the craftsman who made this bowl on the San Juan Islands in the town of Friday Harbor, Washington. This is the studio of Walt and Janet Koertje. Walt makes bowls. Some of them are art pieces, like this very unusual piece made out of yellow birch. And some are very functional, simple salad bowls. Look at the figuring in this piece. Now over here, one of the art pieces made out of juniper, has very varying color, very unusual. Here, a large bowl that could certainly be used for making salads. Another bowl that's actually laminated, and it's made out of teak. It's all pieces that were glued together and then turned. And this is one of my favorites. Look at this, a giant bowl made out of a maple burl. And I love the fact that he leaves all these features in the piece. It really is a piece of art. And down here, you won't find one of these everywhere, a walnut table. This is all one piece, the base and this bowl. Over here, the simpler and smaller salad bowls, again, they leave these features as part of the piece. Earlier, Walt showed me the material that these bowls are made from. Oh, well, what a wonderful place you have here up in the San Juan Islands. It's just beautiful around here.
Yeah,
and I suppose when it gets cold in the winter, looks like you got a good stockpile of firewood laying around.
Firewood? Get your hands off that. That's not firewood. That's what we do all our bowls out of.
Really? So this is your stock, I guess?
This is exotic Northwest wood right here.
So what kind of species do you have here?
Well, right up there, gnarly stuff up there is juniper.
Juniper, okay.
And alder.
This here?
Alder right there.
Okay.
And then we have big leaf maple right there, fir.
Yeah.
Work on over, and we got some spalted maple over here, and burled maple.
Huh. So these are all actually species that are native to the Northwest here, right?
We try to specialize in all the wood that comes off the island in the Northwest.
Huh. And what does this stuff cost you?
Well, it costs me about a bottle of whiskey every two months to get the loggers to come in and bring me this stuff. Because this is all the trash that they would normally burn.
So bartering is not dead. No cash here.
Absolutely not.
Well,
no cash. That's absolutely what they would normally burn.
Now, I don't want to insult you, but I can't imagine that you're going to turn these really awful-looking pieces of wood into something that's really wonderful.
Well, better step in the shop and let me show you how to do it.
All right. Hey, buddy. Nice big workshop, plenty of tools, and plenty of room, which you really need when you're working on these large pieces.
We have to have all that space.
This is beautiful. And this wood, what is this?
This is juniper.
Wow.
Native to the island.
So I imagine to make a piece like that, you might start out with something like this.
That piece actually came from that block of wood.
Wow. And therefore a forklift, because that's a heavy piece of timber.
We have to have a forklift just to move all the heavy equipment around and to mount them on the lathe. Speaking of which, here it is.
I've never seen a lathe like this. What's the story with this?
Well, this is just not your everyday lathe. This is World War I, World War II lathe. It's a turret lathe. We have done a few things different so that we can cut wood with it instead of metal.
So you've got a piece of wood mounted on it right now. What is this?
This is black walnut. And what we do is we cut the outside first, spin it around, and cut the inside.
Now, I see a router here, but I don't see a tool rest.
Well, that's where we're different. What we do is we slow the piece down so that it's spinning around 40 RPM, and we've actuated a cutting head.
So a high-speed tool against a slow spinning piece of wood.
Right.
You have a little more to take off. Let's do it.
All right, let's get started.
That is slick. So what's next?
We're going to switch it around to the other side and start the inside of the bowl.
I noticed some traditional bowl-turning chisels here. Do you use these anymore?
They're nothing more than decoration on the wall right now.
Now you've removed the faceplate and now attached it to the bottom of the blank for the bowl, and you're reattaching it to the lathe. Now it looks like you trimmed off the excess here, and then you flattened the face, and you started to dig out the center.
And now we're going to start from the center and work out so we have plenty of outboard meat here so that the bowl doesn't blow apart on us right away.
So how much will you leave?
We can make it very thin, but this will be a utilitarian piece like a salad bowl, so we'll leave it about a quarter-ish to 3/8 of an inch.
Well, I really start to get the idea now of how this works and how it's starting to take shape. But, you know, this piece has some defects in it. It has a knot in it right here, and you got a lot of opposing and changing grain. What goes through your mind as you're starting to form it? Are you ever afraid it's going to blow out?
Well, the blowing out is a possibility that can happen, but I feature the defects in the wood. Those are what makes it unique and beautiful. Yeah, we're just roughing it in at this point. But let me take you over to Janet's sanding station and show you one that's finished and ready for her to take over.
So, Janet, it's your job to take the roughed out balls and sand them all nice and smooth.
You got it.
Let me see that tool you were just using. So this is a disc sander on a very soft base, sticky sandpaper, on a flexible shaft that just goes up to an ordinary electric drill.
Right. Walt did this. We ran it through a rheostat so I can slow it down when I have a fragile bowl.
I imagine it takes quite a bit of time, but this is a beautiful one right here, nice and smooth, teak. Now, what do you put on these to protect them when they're finished?
Well, the ones that are going to be used for food, we put a food-grade oil on them, and the art pieces, right away we put a sanding sealer on them to stabilize the cells.
And you have some of your finished pieces over here. They're very unusual, very beautiful, and you've given us a wonderful tour, showed us what it takes to go in and make a piece like this, and gave me a few extra tips, so I want to thank you. Well, I must say, it's a little intimidating to watch Walt turn out bowls like this. But you have to start somewhere, and a good place to start is with a small bowl on a standard workshop lathe. Now, every bowl is going to come out different, so we won't have a plan to offer. However, we will have a video, and you'll hear more about that before the program ends. Before we go any further today, let's talk about shop safety. Be sure to read, understand, and follow all the safety rules that come with your power tools. Knowing how to use your power tools properly will greatly reduce the risk of personal injury. And remember this, there is no more important safety rule than to wear these safety glasses. Now for the wood, we want green hardwood. You're not going to find that down at the home center. The best place to go is to a tree service company. We just so happen to have a friend who's in that business. We knew he'd have something for us. Well, today we're at the shop and yard of our old friend Matt Foti. He's a certified arborist, and part of his job is to take down damaged trees, and he often ends up with a lot of wood here at the back lot. Hi, Matt.
I know him. How are you?
Good. What do you got here today?
Well, let me show you. Over here I got a piece of apple. I grabbed this because it was a pretty solid piece and large diameter.
Wow, you don't see apple that big around usually. That could be an interesting wood to turn.
Right here I got a really nice stick of white ash.
Wow, that is a nice straight piece. Now, these just come from people's yards? They've been damaged from storms or something like that?
Yeah, well, there's a big problem with ash. A lot of them are dying nowadays, so we've taken out a lot of those, actually.
Really? Wow, look at this. This is quite a burl. Whew.
Yeah, we didn't cut that one. Actually, it's, a customer of ours gave us that, hoping that we could do something with it.
Well, I know a guy who can do something with it. I think it's a little bit too much for me at this point, though.
Not ready to tackle that one.
No.
This is a piece of cherry. There's a lot of different varieties of cherry. This is actually an ornamental Kwanzan cherry.
Mm-hmm. That might be interesting.
Not too often you see it that large in diameter. That's why I grabbed that one.
Now, how about that big log right there?
This is actually New England choke cherry, which makes an interesting wood. It's pretty valuable, too.
All right. Well, what else you got here? This looks a little unusual.
Yeah, that's mulberry, which is, that's actually considered to be kind of a weed tree, but I think it has an interesting grain, maybe a little different, you know?
Now, mulberry, we usually see that as a very small tree, an ornamental.
Yeah, that
deal.
was a good-sized tree right there.
No, I don't think I've ever seen one that size. How about this?
In the fruitwood family, though, you know, it's this is walnut right here.
Black walnut?
Yeah.
Now, did that come from around here, or was that from someplace
Yeah, that
else?
was taken off someone's property. There actually is not a lot, but there are black walnut trees growing in the area.
Well, you sure have a good variety here, and I think what I'm interested in might be a chunk of this walnut, and I want to try that mulberry. Think
Sure.
you can give me a couple pieces about 14, 16 inches long?
Yeah, I'd be happy to saw that up for you.
Great. Well, Matt, this is great. So, what's it going to cost us?
Oh, geez, Norm, I don't know.
Well, I know a guy that trades whiskey for chunks of wood like this.
Not just any whiskey, I hope.
Oh, no, we'll get you something good. We'll take care of you.
Great.
Well, I have no idea what kind of whiskey he likes, but maybe the reason he likes whiskey is because it's aged in wooden barrels. That's another research project I'll have to do. Now, speaking of research, I looked into how the wood should be cut from the log to make a bowl. And contrary to what you might think, it's not cut off the end, it's actually slabbed. So I've laid out some marks, and I'm just going to use my chainsaw to cut a couple blanks. Well, you never know what the inside of a log is going to look like until you make a cut through it. And now that I look more closely at this piece of mulberry, I see that there are some pretty good checks, and I'm worried about that. However, I did cut a slab of that black walnut, and it is gorgeous. So I think what I'm going to do is use this, and I've set the compass for about a 9-inch diameter piece. I'll use the bandsaw to cut out the circle. I have a 3/8 blade. I'm going to come in at a couple points and then cut the circle. That way it won't bind up. There are a lot of ways to mount a blank on the lathe. We're going to use a geared chuck, which has been attached to the shaft of my lathe, and it came with this accessory. It's a worm screw. And what I have to do now is carefully thread it into the hole that I just drilled. They don't make this part easy. There it goes. Now with a wrench to lock my shaft and a little persuasion, we've got it right up against the face of the chuck. Now here's another tip that I learned in my research. It's helpful to bring your live center over for the initial turning until the piece is a little more balanced. So just bring it up against the blank and crank it in just a touch. Okay, now I can move my tool rest into position. And I don't want to do this while it's spinning. I want to bring it over, spin the blank by hand, make sure it's not going to hit the rest, and lock it in place. These are the tools I'll be using for turning our small bowl. A 1/2-inch bowl gouge, which will do the majority of the work. This scraper, this round nose scraper, which is very thick, and you need that in bowl turning so you don't get vibration or chatter. And this small dovetail scraper, and I'll show you what that's for a little while later. want to show you the difference between spindle tools and bowl turning tools. Spindle tools have a different shape. They have very short handles. Bowl turning tools have long handles because you need a lot more control. Now what I'm going to do is take the bowl gouge and make some scrapes to start to refine this blank. Then I'll use some shear cuts to start forming it. Okay, well now we've got a basic shape. The bowl is starting to take form. Now I can slide my live center out of the way. We'll even pull this out so we won't bump into it. And now I'll smooth up the outside and smooth up the bottom using the same gouge. Okay, it's not going to get much better than that. The next thing that I have to do is make a recess in the bottom so that I can turn the piece around on our chuck to turn the inside of the bowl. First thing I want to do is draw a line for the circle. It's about a 2-inch diameter circle. So I'll just take my dividers, which I've already set, by eye, and then like that. Okay, that's my layout. Now I'll grab my gouge once again and start to hollow it out. Okay, I need it to be about 1/4 of an inch deep, and that's what it is in the middle. So now I'm going to grab this dovetail scraper, and I'm going to scrape in slowly so that I got an angle cut back, the same as this chisel. Okay, that should be good. The next thing I want to do is sand the outside of the bowl. And for that I'm using my electric drill with a soft pad sanding disc, like the one Walt had, except instead of using sticky sandpaper, I'm using hook and loop. I'll start with 60 grit and work up to the finer grits. All right. Well, we'll go through a series of different grits before I leave tonight. Tomorrow we'll finish the inside of this bowl. Well, it's a beautiful day to finish off our walnut bowl. I finished the sanding last night, and then I covered it with a plastic bag. I don't want this to dry out and check before I finish the turning. It's amazing how quickly it'll dry out. Now I can unscrew the blank off of that worm screw, and then I'm going to remove the worm screw from the chuck. Now I'll show you how this recess that I made earlier works. It slips over this end of the chuck, which is also tapered slightly, and then I expand the chuck inside of that recess, and that's really going to hold the piece safely and secure. Now there's a hole that's been drilled within 5/8 of an inch of the bottom of the bowl. It'll act as a guide. Just as with the outside, I'm using the 1/2-inch bowl gouge to remove the material. I start in the center, keep digging in, working my way to the outside. It takes a little while. Well, I've reached the bottom of my hole, so I don't want to go much deeper than that. And at this point, I want to check the thickness of the wall. So I have these double-ended calipers. Stick one end inside, squeeze it, and this shows me how much material I have. So as I slide it out, I can see that the top is just a little bit narrower. The ideal bowl will be thick at the rim, a little bit thinner about halfway down, and about the same thickness of the rim when it gets to the bottom. Well, now I'm happy with the shape of the bowl. I've got a nice thin wall. It seems like every bowl I turn, it gets a little bit thinner, and that's the trick, make it as thin as possible. But it's still a little rough, so now I've turned to this scraper. It's a round nose scraper. I hold it down at a slight angle. I'm not trying to engage the whole edge, just a portion of it to smooth things out. As a final step, I like to just take some shavings and burnish the wood a bit. Now we need to put a finish on it, and we'll do it right here on the lathe. That's the best place. Because the bowl will be used for food, we want a non-toxic finish. So I can use mineral oil, that's fine. I'm going to use walnut oil, which I picked up at the local grocery store. I just put a bit on a rag, turn the lathe on, and put as much as it'll take. Well, Walt, I don't think you have to worry about any competition from the new Yankee Workshop. I can see how people get addicted to making these. This was a lot of fun. Now, every once in a while, to maintain the bowl, I'll just put on a fresh coat of oil.